Hey guys, let's talk about driving in the UK and how to make it slightly less terrifying. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alana and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for nearly 8 years. Driving, scary. Yeah. But I do have some tips and advice from my personal experiences on how to make this whole process a little bit less scary. So first and foremost, you are going to need a license. Now there's a couple of ways that you can approach this situation depending on what nationality you are. Now certain nationalities can exchange their home country license for a full British license without having to take any extra tests. Thankfully, Canada is included on this list. Other countries are places like Australia, Japan, New Zealand, South Africa, and South Korea. So there is a list of what they call designated countries. If you have a driving license, a full driving license from one of these countries, you can exchange it for a UK one up to 5 years after you become a resident here in the UK. If you can't exchange your license or you wait too long to do it, you will have to take all of the tests from the beginning to get your license, just like a British person would. Also, certain nationalities are allowed to use their foreign driving license for up to 12 months. Now, the big question that a lot of people ask is automatic versus manual. Now, in the UK, traditionally, most people drive manual, or what I would call in Canada, stick shift or standard. Manual is just like what everybody does, which is the opposite in North America. Pretty much everybody, the standard type of car is automatic. Now, if you are lucky enough to be on the designated country list, which means you can exchange your license for a British one, it's likely that you're going to get an automatic license. The UK is a little bit funny in that there are two different types of licenses. Ones that allow you to drive automatic cars and ones that allow you to drive manual and automatic. So as a Canadian, we didn't have a choice. You just get a driver's license. But when I exchanged my Canadian driver's license for a British one, I received an automatic license. If I wanted to drive manual, I would need to go through all of the tests again to do so. If you can't exchange your license, you will have to decide, will you go for an automatic license or will you go for a manual and automatic license? In my humble opinion, automatic all the way. As more and more cars are becoming electric or even partially electric, a lot of vehicles are moving towards becoming automatic. So in my humble opinion, if you have to decide, go automatic. It is also cheaper to go this route in the long run. Let me explain. So typically automatic cars in the UK are more expensive because there are less of them. So I know when I was trying to find a used automatic car, something small, they were more expensive because there's just less of them. So when you see that, you might think, well, maybe I should get a manual license because then I could get a cheaper car. But the cost of taking lessons is really expensive. If you are trying to learn manual from scratch, you will need a lot of lessons to get there to be able to pass your test, and it is very expensive. So humble opinion, if you have to choose, go automatic. The cars are going to be a little bit more expensive, but it is way cheaper than having to learn manual right from the beginning, pay for all those lessons just to get a slightly cheaper car. Side note, manual, for me at least, is way more difficult. So just hot little tip. If you are looking to take all of the driving tests here in the UK, of course, it's going to cost you. So the theory test currently is £23, and there is one driving test, which is £62, or it's a bit more expensive at £75 for evening, weekends, or bank holidays. Now, you must have lived in England, Wales, or Scotland for at least 185 days in the last 12 months before the day of your test, which ends up being about 6 months. So basically the general timeline is you move to the UK, you'll have 6 months of living in the UK, getting set up, getting a job, getting a house, all that fun stuff. After 6 months, you then could take your driving test if you need to. Like I mentioned earlier, if you are allowed to exchange your license, like Australia, like Canada, you do not have to do any of these tests. Now, if you are lucky enough to exchange your license, I've got a couple of hot tips for this whole process. You do not need to take any of the tests again, any of the theory or the driving. You are literally able to exchange your license, get a UK one, and start driving. However, that's kind of dangerous in that you're not familiar with the roads, you're not familiar with the signs, you're not familiar with driving on the left, perhaps, and you may not be familiar with roundabouts. So I would 100% recommend doing what they call refresher lessons. That's what I did, and I would absolutely recommend it. So basically, I went out with a driving instructor for, I think it was 2 hours, and we just practiced. So it's for people in my situation, like foreigners coming here, but also maybe if you don't have a lot of confidence driving, just as a British person, these refresher lessons are for people with a license, but don't feel quite ready yet. It honestly made all the difference. And it is especially helpful if you come to the UK completely alone and you don't have a British partner or a British friend that could take you out and help you practice. I had a little bit of a Google, a little bit of a Bing on costs of these refresher lessons because mine's been like 6 years now. For about 2 hours, you're looking about like £70 here in Kent. Your part of the UK is probably going to be different, but around that cost. Manual refresher lessons were way easier to find because again, more people drive manual. Automatic was a bit more difficult, but I still found them. So they do still exist. And you're looking maybe 70 to 100 pounds. Next up, my hot tip just for literally every expat is to practice. I was extremely intimidated driving here in the UK. I didn't think it would happen, to be completely honest, but we got there eventually. The refresher lesson was absolutely massively important. I think I did 2. So I think I did 2 hours on one Saturday, and then the next weekend I did another 2 hours on the Saturday, and I just felt so much better. But I also practice. So what I did, I had a new job and I needed to drive to get to the new job, which is why I ended up going through this whole process. So for days before I got that new job, I practiced the route from home to the office and then from the office home. I just did that loop over and over and over again, literally for hours, just to practice where I'd be driving, what I'd be seeing, the speed limits, the roundabouts, and I just practice and practice to get really, really familiar with it. And eventually it does make sense. You just gotta put in the time and the effort to practice. Now, my final hot tip for expats, big hot tip for driving, the longer you put it off, the worse it will be. And that just sucks. What I mean by that is if you are an anxious driver, which I am, and I was actually in Canada, to be fair. The longer you put off driving in the UK, the worse it's gonna be. It becomes this even like bigger, more stressful, kind of like looming over you thing. My best advice is to get into driving here in the UK as quickly as you are able to. I do believe the quicker you can get into it and into practicing and getting familiar with it, the less of a thing it's gonna be, you know? It's gonna be less stressful. It's not gonna be looming over you for years and years. Just get it done and get practicing. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. Definitely check out this video. I go through step by step how to actually exchange your license for a British one. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.